My name is Ava Redmond, and at 28, I never expected my sister June's wedding day would become the stage for my ultimate vindication. Standing beside her, watching her exchange vows, should have been simply joyful, a moment of pure familial bliss. But years of unfair treatment, a lifetime of being overlooked and undermined, had built up to this moment. I still hear their cold words echoing. She deserved it, Ava. You never had what it takes. The memory of that night, when my parents dismissed my dreams with such casual cruelty, fueled every late night, every sacrifice. Before I reveal what made their faces turn ghostly pale, if you've ever had to fight twice as hard for everything you have, hit that like button and tell me your story in the comments. I grew up in a seemingly normal middle-class family in suburban Michigan. Our two-story house with the white picket fence looked perfect from the outside, complete with family photos displaying forced smiles that hid the complicated reality within. My parents, Robert and Diana Redmond, worked stable jobs, Dad as an accountant and Mom as a high school English teacher. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable enough that financial struggles weren't supposed to be in my future. My sister June was 2 years younger than me, but somehow always seemed miles ahead in our parents' eyes. With her perfect blonde curls, effortless academic achievements, and natural charm, she embodied everything they valued. From a young age, the contrast was stark. June was the golden child, the one whose report cards were displayed on the fridge, whose piano recitals were attended by every available relative, whose every minor achievement was celebrated with effusive praise. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the one who struggled a little more with math, whose art projects were deemed interesting rather than brilliant, whose quiet successes went largely unnoticed. It wasn't overt malice, not at first, but a subtle, pervasive favoritism that seeped into every corner of our lives. I remember one particularly vivid incident from when I was 10 and June was 8. We both tried out for the school play. June, with her natural flair, landed the lead role of Cinderella. I, who had spent weeks practicing lines in secret, was cast as a nameless villager. My parents' reaction? "Oh, June, that's wonderful. We knew you'd get it." And to me, a dismissive, "Well, Ava, at least you tried. Maybe acting isn't your strong suit." The sting of those words, the implied inadequacy, became a familiar ache. This pattern continued through middle school. June sailed through her classes, always on the honor roll, always excelling in extracurriculars. I, while certainly not failing, had to work harder for my grades. If June brought home an A, it was met with cheers and a celebratory dinner. If I brought home an A, it was often met with, "Oh, that's nice." Did June get an A too? My accomplishments were always measured against hers and almost always found wanting. My support system, slender as it was, came in the form of my grandmother, Nana Rose, my mother's mother, who lived a few towns over. Nana Rose was a pragmatic woman, her hands gnarled from years of gardening, her eyes crinkling with warmth when she smiled. She saw me, truly saw me, beyond the comparisons. "Ava," she'd say, pulling me onto her lap, "you have a different kind of light. It's quieter, perhaps, but it burns just as bright. Don't let anyone dim it." Her words were a balm to my bruised spirit, a lifeline in a sea of unspoken judgment. She'd tell me stories of her own struggles, of forging her path despite societal expectations, instilling in me a quiet resilience. Another unexpected source of belief came from Mr. Harrison, my high school art teacher. He was a gruff man, with paint stains permanently adorning his smock, but he had an uncanny ability to spot talent where others saw only mediocrity. He saw the intricate detail in my sketches, the emotion in my paintings. "Ava," he'd say, leaning over my work, "you have an eye, a vision. Don't let anyone tell you it's not enough." He encouraged me to apply for art scholarships, to pursue my passion, something my parents dismissed as a frivolous hobby. The preferential treatment June received wasn't just about grades or extracurriculars. It permeated every aspect of our lives. When June wanted a new dress for a dance, it was bought without question. When I needed art supplies for a project, it was often met with a sigh and a lecture about being practical. When June had a problem with a friend, my mother would spend hours comforting her, offering advice. When I was going through a tough time, I was often told to just get over it or toughen up. One year, for my 16th birthday, I had asked for a specific art easel I had been saving up for, but it was expensive. My parents hesitated, discussed it for days, and finally bought me a cheaper, less functional one. 2 months later, for June's 14th birthday, she expressed a passing interest in a high-end guitar, and it appeared in our living room the very next day. The stark disparity was a constant, gnawing pain. It wasn't about the material things, but the message they conveyed. June's desires were important, mine were negotiable. The emotional toll of this consistent devaluation was immense. I became withdrawn, less likely to share my aspirations, fearing the inevitable dismissal. I started internalizing the narrative that I wasn't as good, as capable as my sister. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, a small, lonely heap under my covers, wishing I could be more like June, wishing I could earn my parents' unqualified love. But beneath the sadness, a small spark of defiance began to glow. A quiet resolve to prove them wrong, not just for their sake, but for mine. The summer before my senior year of high school, I poured every ounce of my being into preparing my portfolio for art school applications. My dream was to attend the Rhode Island School of Design, RISD, one of the most prestigious art schools in the country. It was a long shot, I knew, but I had worked tirelessly, spending countless hours in Mr. Harrison's art room, refining my technique, experimenting with new mediums. My portfolio was, if I do say so myself, the best work I had ever produced. It was raw, honest, and truly mine. I received an acceptance letter from RISD in late March of my senior year. It wasn't just an acceptance. It came with a significant scholarship covering 60% of the tuition. I was ecstatic. This was it. My chance, my escape, my future. I remember holding the thick envelope in my trembling hands, a warmth spreading through me that I hadn't felt in years. I burst into the living room where my parents were watching TV, the letter clutched to my chest. "Mom, Dad, I got into RISD, and they gave me a scholarship." I practically shouted, my voice cracking with emotion. My mother, Diana, slowly turned from the television, her expression unreadable. My father, Robert, merely raised an eyebrow. There was no immediate hug, no enthusiastic congratulations. "RISD," my mother finally said, her tone flat. "Ava, we've talked about this. Art is not a stable career. What are you going to do with an art degree? Starve." My excitement withered. "But Mom, it's a scholarship. And it's RISD, it's a great school. I can make a career out of this, I know I can." "Honey," my father interjected, his voice laced with the same weary dismissiveness I had grown so accustomed to. "We've always encouraged you to be realistic. June is looking at pre-med programs, something that will guarantee her a future. This art thing is just a phase." "A phase?" I felt a surge of indignation. "I've been drawing and painting my whole life. Mr. Harrison says I have real talent. Mr. Harrison is an art teacher, my mother said with a dismissive wave of her hand. His job is to encourage everyone. Look, we appreciate your passion, but we can't afford to send you to an expensive art school, even with a partial scholarship, when there are more practical options. And, honestly, we need to think about June's college fund. Her future is paramount. That was the devastating quote teaser. She deserved it, but you didn't. It wasn't just spoken. It was implied in their every action, every word. The unspoken belief that June's future was inherently more valuable, more deserving of investment than mine. They didn't say those exact words that night, but the sentiment was palpable, suffocating. The memory of that night when they effectively told me my dreams were not worth pursuing, that my talent was not enough, that I was not enough, solidified my resolve. June, who had been listening from the doorway, casually walked in then, a textbook in her hand. "What's all the fuss about?" she asked, her voice sweet, innocent. My mother immediately brightened. "Ava got into some art school, dear, but we're just explaining to her that it's not a practical choice. Now, about that biology test you have next week, have you started studying for it?" The swift shift in attention, the immediate embrace of June's academic pursuits, was a familiar stab. I felt a cold rage settle deep within me. It wasn't just disappointment, it was a profound sense of betrayal. The people who were supposed to be my biggest champions had just crushed my aspirations, not because of financial impossibility, but because they simply didn't believe in me. They didn't see the value in my passion, in my drive. They saw a risk, a deviation from their prescribed path for success, and they prioritized June's guaranteed future over my deeply held dream. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, trembling with suppressed fury. "You're just going to dismiss everything I've worked for?" My father sighed. "Ava, we're doing this for your own good. We want you to have a secure life. There are plenty of good state schools where you can get a solid degree in something useful. We just want what's best for you." "No," I said, looking them both in the eye, "you want what's easiest. You want me to fit into your mold, just like June. But I'm not June." I turned and walked out, the acceptance letter still clutched in my hand, feeling the fragile hope I had nurtured for so long shatter into a million pieces. That night, I called Nana Rose, tears streaming down my face as I recounted the conversation. She listened patiently, her quiet hum of understanding a balm to my raw emotions. "They just don't see it, do they?" I sobbed. "They see what they want to see, dear," she replied, her voice soft but firm. "But that doesn't make it the truth. You know who you are. You know what you're capable of. And sometimes, the greatest strength comes from proving yourself to yourself, not to others." Nana Rose's words were a turning point. Instead of succumbing to despair, I felt a new resolve harden within me. If they wouldn't support my dreams, I would build them myself. If they wouldn't believe in me, I would believe in myself with every fiber of my being. I would find a way. This dismissal, this outright rejection of my aspirations, became the fuel that ignited my journey. It was the moment I realized that my path to success would be one forged by my own hands, independent of their approval. After that devastating conversation, I knew I couldn't rely on my parents for financial or emotional support for my artistic endeavors. I still attended college, choosing a state university with a more affordable tuition, majoring in graphic design, a compromise that my parents deemed practical enough. But my true education happened outside the classroom, in the quiet hours after homework was done, fueled by coffee and an unyielding desire to prove them wrong. My first step was to secure my financial independence. During my freshman year, I took on every odd job I could find. I waited tables at a local diner, tutored high school students in English, and even worked retail on weekends. I saved every penny, meticulously tracking my expenses. I learned the value of $1, a lesson my sister June, who received a generous allowance and had her credit card bills paid by our parents, never had to learn. Parallel to my formal studies, I delved into online courses and tutorials on digital art, animation, and web design. I discovered a passion for the intersection of art and technology, a field that felt vibrant and full of possibilities. While my classmates were enjoying college parties, I was hunched over my laptop, learning coding languages, experimenting with design software, and building a portfolio of digital creations. It was grueling, lonely work at times, but the thought of my parents' dismissive words, the memory of that night, propelled me forward. Every line of code, every perfected design, felt like a small victory, a defiant rebuttal to their doubt. Mr. Harrison, my former art teacher, remained a crucial source of encouragement. I'd visit him occasionally, bringing my latest digital designs. He might not have fully understood the intricacies of web development, but he recognized the underlying artistic vision and my unwavering dedication. "Ava," he'd say, examining a complex wireframe, "you have an incredible work ethic. That's more valuable than any inherent talent, though you have plenty of that too." He connected me with a few local businesses looking for freelance graphic design work, giving me my first taste of professional experience. My first client, a small bakery, paid me $150 for a logo design. It was a paltry sum, but it felt like a fortune, a tangible validation of my skills. My closest friend in college, Sarah, became my confidant and cheerleader. Sarah was a computer science major, brilliant and incredibly supportive. She saw the grind I was putting myself through and never once suggested I was crazy. Instead, she offered practical advice, helped me troubleshoot coding issues, and most importantly, believed in me unconditionally. "Ava," she'd say during late-night study sessions, "you're building something incredible. It's slow, but it's yours. And trust me, that's worth more than any shortcut." She would often remind me that the journey itself was valuable, not just the destination. "Remember that time my mom said I should just be more like June?" I'd say to Sarah one evening, recounting a particularly frustrating phone call with my parents. Sarah would just shake her head. "Your mom doesn't get it, Ava. June's path is laid out for her. Yours, you're paving yourself. That's a harder road, but it builds character, and it builds genuine success." June, meanwhile, was excelling in her pre-med program, living the life our parents had envisioned for her. She would call occasionally, her conversations filled with anecdotes about her rigorous coursework, her impressive internships, and her plans for medical school. There was always an underlying current of superiority, a subtle implication that her chosen path was more noble, more intellectual than mine. "Still doing your little art projects, Ava?" she'd ask, a condescending lilt in her voice. "That's nice. Someone has to make pretty pictures, I guess." I would just smile, a secret knowing smile, and change the subject. I knew something she didn't. I was building something real, something revolutionary. My online presence began to grow. I started a blog, Pixel and Grit, where I shared my design process, tutorials, and insights into the freelance world. It wasn't just a portfolio, it became a community. Other aspiring designers and creatives, feeling similarly undervalued, found solace and inspiration in my honest accounts of struggle and perseverance. My blog posts about overcoming creative blocks or navigating difficult clients resonated deeply. The comments section filled with messages like, "Thank you for sharing this, Ava. I thought I was the only one, and your story really motivates me to keep going." These messages were my fuel, a constant reminder that my voice mattered, that my journey wasn't just for me. By my junior year, I was taking on increasingly complex freelance projects, website redesigns, branding packages for startups, even a mobile app interface. My rates steadily increased, and I started building a substantial savings account. I was living frugally, reinvesting much of my earnings back into professional development, premium software licenses, online masterclasses, and attending virtual industry conferences. I even rented a small, cheap studio space off campus, a sanctuary where I could work undisturbed, away from the sterile dorm room environment. It was tiny, with peeling paint and a perpetually leaky faucet, but it was mine. One pivotal moment came during a university career fair. While most of my peers were lining up for corporate internships, I had set up a small booth showcasing my freelance portfolio and a QR code linking to my Pixel and Grit blog. A distinguished-looking woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, Sarah's former professor Dr. Anya Sharma, stopped at my table. She was a renowned expert in human-computer interaction and a venture capitalist. She spent a long time looking through my digital portfolio, her expression unreadable. I braced myself for the polite dismissal, the same kind of lukewarm interest I often received when trying to explain my unconventional path. Instead, she looked up, a rare smile gracing her lips. "This is impressive, Ms. Redmond." "More than impressive. The user experience on your portfolio site is intuitive, the aesthetics are clean, and your blog demonstrates a remarkable understanding of the creative economy. Most students your age are still fumbling with basic design principles. You're building something much larger here." My heart pounded. "Thank you, Dr. Sharma," I managed to stammer. "Have you ever considered turning Pixel and Grit into something more than a blog?" she asked, her eyes gleaming with an entrepreneurial spark. "A platform, perhaps? A hub for freelance creatives, with tools, resources, and a community focus." That conversation was a seismic shift. Dr. Sharma became my mentor, seeing in me not just a talented designer, but a visionary entrepreneur. She introduced me to her network, guiding me through the daunting process of turning a passion project into a viable business. She taught me about market analysis, fundraising, and scaling. Her belief in me was unwavering, her guidance invaluable. It was surreal. While my parents still questioned the validity of my career choice, a venture capitalist was seeing a multi-million-dollar potential in my little art projects. The journey was far from easy. There were countless rejections from potential investors who didn't understand the niche, sleepless nights fueled by caffeine and anxiety, and moments of self-doubt that threatened to consume me. I faced criticism, sometimes even mockery, from peers who thought I was overreaching. But the fire within me, ignited by years of being underestimated, refused to be extinguished. Every no was a reminder of my parents' dismissal, a challenge to overcome. Every small victory, a confirmation of my resilience. By the time I graduated, I didn't just have a diploma, I had a burgeoning startup, Creative Forge, a platform built on the foundation of Pixel and Grit. It offered a suite of tools for freelance designers, a curated job board, and a vibrant community forum. I had secured a modest seed round of funding, thanks to Dr. Sharma's connections, and was slowly building a team. The road was still long, but I was on it, charting my own course, proving to myself, day by day, that I was more than enough. I was capable, I was driven, and I was about to show them all. The wedding invitations had arrived months ago, a thick, embossed card announcing the union of June Redmond and Dr. Ethan Hayes. Ethan was a promising young surgeon from a well-respected family, exactly the kind of match my parents had always dreamed of for June. The entire affair was set to be a grand celebration at an exclusive country club, a testament to June's successful life. My parents had, predictably, subtly pressured me to contribute financially to the wedding. "It's your sister's special day, Ava," my mother had said, her voice laced with expectation. "As her older sister, it would be lovely if you could help with some of the expenses. Perhaps a significant gift." This, despite the fact that I was still building my company, while June had a high-paying residency and Ethan came from considerable wealth. I politely declined, citing my significant startup expenses, which was met with a sigh of thinly veiled disapproval. I arrived at the country club early on the wedding day, dressed in a simple but elegant emerald green dress that contrasted with June's lavish white gown. The air was thick with the scent of white roses and money. Family, friends, distant relatives, and June's new, impressive circle of medical colleagues mingled, their conversations punctuated by polite laughter and clinking champagne flutes. June, of course, looked radiant. Her blonde hair was styled in intricate curls, her dress a cascade of lace and satin. She glowed with an almost ethereal beauty, completely at ease in the spotlight. My parents flitted around her, beaming with pride, introducing her to everyone with exaggerated enthusiasm. They were living their dream through her, completely oblivious to the burgeoning empire I was quietly building. My interactions with my parents that morning were brief and superficial. "Ava, dear, so glad you could make it," my mother said, kissing my cheek distractedly before turning back to a guest. My father merely nodded, his eyes already drifting towards June as she posed for another photo. The familiar ache of invisibility settled over me, but this time it was different. This time it was accompanied by a quiet sense of anticipation, like the hush before a thunderstorm. Sarah arrived with me, her presence a comforting anchor in the swirling current of pre-wedding chatter. She squeezed my hand. "You look amazing, Ava. And you're going to rock this." She knew exactly what I meant. Nana Rose, unfortunately, couldn't make it due to a recent fall, but she had called me that morning, her voice strong. "Remember, dear, sometimes the quietest revolutions are the most powerful." As the ceremony began, I took my seat in the second row, beside Sarah. The ceremony itself was beautiful, traditional, filled with the usual vows and sentiments. June and Ethan looked genuinely happy, and a part of me, the sisterly part, genuinely wished them well. But the other part, the part that had been bruised and overlooked for years, was simmering with a different kind of emotion. During the reception, as the evening progressed, the speeches began. Ethan's best man delivered a humorous, heartfelt toast. Then June's maid of honor, her best friend since childhood, spoke of June's kindness and intelligence. My father then took the microphone, his voice booming with pride. "And now a few words from the proud father of the bride," he began, his gaze sweeping over the assembled guests. He spoke at length about June's accomplishments, her straight A's, her medical school acceptance, her dedication, her bright future. He recounted anecdotes of her childhood brilliance, stories I had heard 1,000 times, each one emphasizing her innate superiority. He even made a subtle dig at my less conventional path, though without mentioning me by name. Some people, he chuckled, choose paths that are less defined. But June, she always knew where she was going, always pursued excellence in the most tangible ways. As he spoke, my mother stood beside him, nodding emphatically, her eyes shining with tears of pride. June, at the head table, basked in the adoration, a demure smile playing on her lips. I could feel the familiar knot of resentment tightening in my stomach. It wasn't just the blatant favoritism, it was the public declaration of it, the reinforcing of the narrative that June was the success story, and I, the forgotten, the outlier. Then came June's turn. She rose from her seat, a champagne flute in her hand, her voice clear and melodious. She thanked her new husband, her in-laws, her friends. And then she turned to our parents, her eyes glistening. And of course, she said, her voice swelling with emotion, to my incredible parents who always believed in me, who supported every dream, every ambition. You always knew I had what it takes. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room, and then, slowly, deliberately, her eyes landed on me. A condescending smile played on her lips. And to my dear sister, Ava, she began, her tone shifting subtly, thank you for being here. It's lovely to have you. You know, she continued, her voice gaining volume, Ava has always been a little different. She's always had her head in the clouds, pursuing her art projects. It's important to have hobbies, of course. But some of us, like Ethan and I, prefer a more practical path, a more stable one. It's good to have someone around to remind you of simpler times, I suppose. The air in the room seemed to crackle. Her words, though seemingly benign, were laced with a venomous condescension, a public dismissal of my entire being, my worth, my future. It was a calculated insult, a subtle but undeniable assertion of her superiority, right there, in front of everyone who mattered to her. I saw a few guests exchange uncomfortable glances. My parents, however, merely smiled, perhaps not even registering the subtle cruelty in June's words, or perhaps choosing to ignore it. My face remained impassive, a mask of practiced calm, but inside, a quiet storm was brewing. The culmination of years of being told I wasn't enough, of being dismissed, of having my dreams belittled, reached a crescendo. The memory of my parents' words, "She deserved it, but you didn't," echoed in my mind, mocking me. This was it. This was the final straw. Before I reveal what made their faces turn ghostly pale, if you've ever had to fight twice as hard for everything you have, hit that like button and tell me your story in the comments. The stage was set, the audience was primed, and the quiet revolution I had been building was about to explode into public view. The room was filled with the murmur of polite applause as June finished her subtle yet pointed speech. Her eyes, still fixed on me, held a triumphant glint. My parents, oblivious, were beaming, clearly pleased with their daughter's elegant, if slightly condescending, acknowledgement. I felt a cold knot in my stomach, but beneath it, a quiet resolve hardened into steel. The time for passive acceptance was over. Just as June was about to hand the microphone back to the DJ, a new voice, clear and commanding, cut through the celebratory din. "Excuse me, June, is this an open floor for well wishes?" All heads turned towards the source of the voice. Standing at the entrance to the ballroom, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, was Dr. Anya Sharma. My heart gave a little jolt. She wasn't supposed to be here. I hadn't even thought to invite her, not wanting to mix my professional world with my complicated family dynamics. But there she was, a formidable presence, her eyes scanning the room. June, momentarily flustered, stuttered, "Dr. Sharma? I didn't expect you." Dr. Sharma offered a gracious, professional smile. "I apologize for the intrusion, June. I was invited by Ethan's father, a longtime colleague of mine. I just arrived from a conference. I understand you're about to embark on your residency at St. Jude's Medical Center. June puffed out her chest slightly. Yes, that's correct. I'm very excited. It's a highly competitive program. Indeed, Dr. Sharma said, her gaze now sweeping towards my parents, who looked utterly bewildered by her presence. And I believe your new boss, Dr. Peterson, is also here tonight? June nodded, a nervous smile playing on her lips. Yes, he's at the head table with Ethan's family. Dr. Sharma's eyes twinkled with a subtle amusement. She then looked directly at me, a knowing glint in her eyes, and a small, almost imperceptible nod. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't a coincidence. This was fate, or perhaps Dr. Sharma's calculated move. She then cleared her throat and addressed the room, her voice carrying an undeniable authority. Ladies and gentlemen, I must apologize for interrupting, but I feel compelled to share a moment of immense professional pride. As a venture capitalist and an educator, I have had the privilege of working with some truly exceptional minds. And tonight, here, at this wonderful celebration, I have encountered an extraordinary individual who has consistently defied expectations and built something truly remarkable. June's smile faltered. My parents exchanged confused glances. The polite murmuring in the room died down as everyone's attention shifted to Dr. Sharma. I am speaking, of course, Dr. Sharma continued, her gaze unwavering as it settled on me, about Ava Redmond. A hush fell over the room. June's mouth dropped open slightly. My parents looked utterly flabbergasted, their faces turning a shade of ghostly pale. Ava, Dr. Sharma continued, her voice resonating with genuine admiration, is the visionary founder and CEO of Creative Forge, a revolutionary platform that is rapidly transforming the freelance creative industry. What started as a small blog, Pixel and Grit, has, under Ava's leadership, grown into a multi-million-dollar tech startup. She has secured 2 rounds of significant funding, built an impressive team, and her platform currently serves over 200,000 active users worldwide. Her work has been featured in Forbes, TechCrunch, and last month, she was named one of 30 under 30 foot by Entrepreneur magazine. Each word was a hammer blow, shattering the carefully constructed narrative of my perceived failure. I saw my father grip my mother's arm, his eyes wide with disbelief. June's perfectly coiffed hair seemed to deflate slightly, her face a mask of shock and dawning horror. Just last week, Dr. Sharma went on, seemingly enjoying the stunned silence. Creative Forge closed a series of funding round of $10 million, led by my own firm, and valued at a staggering $50 million. This makes Ava, at 28, one of the youngest and most successful female tech entrepreneurs in the country. The gasped murmurs that rippled through the room were palpable. My parents looked like they had seen a ghost, their faces draining of all color. June, meanwhile, was staring at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and, finally, a simmering resentment. Her little art projects were now a $50 million company. Dr. Sharma concluded, her voice full of pride, Ava Redmond is not just building a company, she is building an ecosystem, empowering countless creatives, and proving that true innovation comes from passion, perseverance, and an unwavering belief in one's own vision, even when others fail to see it. It is an honor to be her mentor and her investor. Congratulations, Ava, on your incredible success. She then raised her glass. To Ava. The room, initially stunned into silence, erupted into applause. It wasn't the polite, Obligatory applause for the bride and groom. It was genuine, enthusiastic, almost reverent. Strangers were turning to look at me, their faces a mixture of curiosity and admiration. I felt a warmth spread through me, not from the alcohol, but from the sheer, overwhelming wave of public recognition. This was it. This was the moment I had worked for, sacrificed for years. This was the vindication. My parents were still frozen, their mouths slightly agape. June looked utterly devastated, her carefully constructed image of effortless superiority crumbling around her. Dr. Peterson, June's new boss, a distinguished-looking man with silver hair, had risen from his seat at the head table and was now making his way towards me, a look of keen interest on his face. The delicious irony was not lost on me. June had just publicly dismissed my ambitions as mere hobbies, and moments later, her new boss was walking towards me, not her, to congratulate me on my monumental success. Before I reveal what made their faces turn ghostly pale, if you've ever had to fight twice as hard for everything you have, hit that like button and tell me your story in the comments. The real show was just beginning. The applause for Dr. Sharma's impromptu announcement slowly died down, replaced by a buzzing hum of conversation. All eyes in the room were on me, a stark contrast to the years I had spent feeling invisible. My parents looked as if they'd been struck by lightning, their faces still ashen. June, at the head table, was red-faced, her eyes darting between me and the approaching Dr. Peterson. Dr. Peterson, June's new boss, a renowned figure in the medical community and, as I would soon discover, a significant investor in several tech ventures, approached me with a warm smile. "Ava Redmond," he said, extending a hand. "Dr. Thomas Peterson. It's an absolute pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard so much about Creative Forge from Anya. What you're building is truly remarkable." He shook my hand with a firm, genuine grip. "I'm particularly impressed by your commitment to empowering independent creatives. It's a severely underserved market, and your platform is poised to revolutionize it." I managed a polite smile, still reeling slightly from the sudden spotlight. "Thank you, Dr. Peterson. It's an honor to meet you too." Meanwhile, my mother, Diana, had finally found her voice, albeit a shaky one. "Ava? A multi-million-dollar company." Her voice was barely a whisper, laced with disbelief. My father, Robert, equally stunned, chimed in. "Forbes? Entrepreneur magazine? Why didn't you tell us any of this?" His tone held a hint of accusation, as if my success was a deliberate secret kept from them, rather than a natural consequence of their neglect. I looked at them, a small, knowing smile touching my lips. "I tried, Dad," I said, my voice calm and clear enough to carry over the lingering buzz in the room. "Many times. But you were always so busy celebrating June's practical path." The sting in my words was subtle, but undeniable. June, who had now come down from the head table, stood rigidly beside her new husband, Ethan, her face a storm of conflicting emotions, embarrassment, anger, and a flicker of something akin to fear. Her perfect wedding, her moment of triumph, was being completely overshadowed by my unexpected emergence from her shadow. "Ava, this is unbelievable," June said, her voice strained. "Why would you keep something like this from us?" "Keep it from you?" I countered, my voice still calm, but with an edge of steel. "June, how many times did I try to talk about my work, my projects? How many times did I mention pixel and grit only to have it dismissed as a hobby or little art projects? You just called it that a few minutes ago. Do you remember what Mom and Dad said when I got into RISD with a scholarship?" I paused, letting the implication hang in the air. "They said it wasn't practical." They said my future wasn't as important as yours. They said she deserved it, but you didn't. I looked directly at my parents when I uttered those last words, their faces contorting in discomfort and shame. The room was utterly silent. The guests, initially just curious, were now fully invested in the unfolding drama. Sarah stood beside me, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. Dr. Peterson, a man clearly attuned to subtle social dynamics, gently intervened, sensing the tension. Regardless of past miscommunications, he said, turning back to me, what you've achieved, Ava, is truly extraordinary. I'd love to connect with you properly next week if you're available. Perhaps we could discuss potential collaborations or even exploring investment opportunities for your next round. My parents and June gasped simultaneously. Dr. Peterson, June's new boss, was not only praising me but was actively seeking a business meeting and contemplating investment. The shift in dynamics was breathtaking. I would be delighted, Dr. Peterson, I replied, a genuine smile now gracing my lips. My assistant can coordinate with your office. The mention of an assistant, of a structured business operation, seemed to land another heavy blow on June and my parents. Just then, Mr. Harrison, my old art teacher, who had been invited by Nana Rose's suggestion, I hadn't even realized he was there, made his way over, his eyes twinkling. Well, Ava, he said, a proud smile on his face. Looks like those frivolous hobbies worked out pretty well, huh? He clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture of deep, quiet pride. My parents, witnessing Mr. Harrison's easy camaraderie with me, their faces were a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. The narrative they had carefully constructed around June's success and my perceived lack thereof was crumbling before their very eyes. The public vindication was complete. June, unable to bear it any longer, finally snapped. This is my wedding, Ava. You're ruining it, she hissed, her voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. I looked at her, my gaze steady. Am I June? Or am I simply existing? My success isn't about ruining your day. It's about building my own life, despite everyone who told me I couldn't. My mother stepped forward, her hand reaching out tentatively towards me. Ava, honey, we never meant. We just wanted you to be safe, to be happy. Her voice was soft, laced with a newfound vulnerability. I am safe, Mom, I said, my voice firm. And I am happy. Happier than I've ever been. Because I built this. Not on your expectations, but on my own terms. The weight that had been pressing down on me for years, the constant need for their approval, the lingering sting of their dismissals, finally lifted. It was a profound release. The quiet revolution had indeed been powerful. The rest of June's wedding reception was a blur of polite congratulations and awkward avoidance from my parents and sister. Dr. Peterson stayed for a while longer, engaging me in a fascinating conversation about the future of remote work and the gig economy, seemingly oblivious to the familial drama unfolding around us. Other guests, now aware of my professional standing, approached me with genuine curiosity and admiration. It was a stark contrast to the usual polite but disinterested nods I received at family gatherings. Later that evening, after the last guest had departed and the caterers were packing up, my parents approached me, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and regret. June and Ethan had already left for their honeymoon. Ava, my father began, his voice uncharacteristically soft. We had no idea. We're truly sorry. My mother nodded, tears welling in her eyes. We were so wrong. We truly believed we were doing what was best for you, guiding you toward stability. We just didn't understand your vision. The words, though late, held a genuine ring of remorse. For years, I had craved this apology, this acknowledgement of their blindness. But now it felt less like a monumental triumph and more like a quiet confirmation. The validation I truly needed had already come from within and from the success I had painstakingly built. "I know you believed you were doing what was best," I replied, my voice calm, devoid of the anger I once felt. "But sometimes, best is defined by the individual, not by expectations or societal norms. You tried to fit me into a box that was never meant for me." There was a long silence. Finally, my father spoke again. "Is there anything we can do to make it right, Ava? We want to support you now." Truly. I looked at them, truly seeing them for the first time in years, not as antagonists, but as flawed individuals who had acted out of their own limited understanding. "You can start by genuinely listening," I said, "and by realizing that success comes in many forms. And perhaps by acknowledging that June's path, while valid for her, isn't the only one." The conversation was a turning point. It wasn't an immediate magical transformation, but it was a beginning. Over the next few months, our relationship slowly, tentatively, began to mend. My parents started asking about Creative Forge, genuinely interested in the details of the business. My mother even subscribed to my old Pixel and Grit blog, leaving surprisingly thoughtful comments. My father, with his accounting background, offered to look over some of my financial projections, an offer I accepted with a cautious optimism. It wasn't about needing their help, but about the gesture, the acknowledgement of my capabilities. My relationship with June, however, was more complex. The wedding incident had clearly rattled her. For weeks after, she was distant, her calls brief and formal. Then, one evening, she called me, her voice unexpectedly subdued. "Ava," she said, I'm really sorry about what I said at the wedding. It was uncalled for. I was jealous. And honestly, I was completely shocked. I really had no idea how successful you were." Her admission of jealousy was surprising, almost disarming. It peeled back the layers of her polished facade, revealing a vulnerability I rarely saw. "It's okay, June," I said, genuinely meaning it. "It's been a long road for both of us." We talked for nearly an hour that night, something we hadn't done since childhood. She admitted the immense pressure she felt to maintain her image of perfection, to live up to our parents' expectations. I shared the loneliness of my journey, the constant struggle to prove myself. It wasn't a sudden best friend reunion, but it was a crucial step towards understanding, towards rebuilding a foundation based on mutual respect rather than sibling rivalry. We might never be as close as some sisters, but there was a newfound honesty between us. My professional life, meanwhile, soared. The publicity from Dr. Sharma's impromptu announcement at the wedding, coupled with the 30 under 30 recognition, brought Creative Forge an avalanche of new users and investor interest. We quickly outgrew our modest office space and moved into a sleek, modern headquarters in a bustling tech hub. My team grew from a handful of dedicated individuals to a thriving community of over 50 passionate professionals. I ensured that Creative Forge embodied the values I held dear: inclusivity, innovation, and unwavering support for independent creatives. We launched mentorship programs, provided free resources for aspiring artists, and actively championed diversity in the tech and creative industries. The core mission, born from my own struggles, was to ensure that no creative felt undervalued or overlooked, that every voice had a platform to shine. One of the most fulfilling aspects of my success was being able to give back. I established the Nana Rose Art and Tech Scholarship, providing full tuition and living expenses for promising young artists and technologists from underserved backgrounds, specifically those who, like me, faced dismissive attitudes towards their unconventional dreams. Nana Rose, now in her late 80s, was overjoyed. "You did it, dear," she said, her eyes twinkling as she attended the inaugural scholarship ceremony. "You used your light to light up the world for others." I also became a vocal advocate for arts education and entrepreneurial initiatives. I spoke at conferences, sharing my story of resilience and encouraging others to pursue their passions, regardless of external validation. Don't let anyone else define your worth, I'd tell aspiring entrepreneurs. Your journey is unique, and your passion is your greatest asset. It might be harder, but the success you build for yourself, the one that comes from grit and determination, is the most fulfilling kind. My story is not just about proving my parents and sister wrong. It's about proving myself right. It's about finding my voice, defining my own version of success, and, most importantly, building a life that truly reflected who I was, not who others expected me to be. The journey was arduous, filled with moments of doubt and despair, but every challenge, every dismissal, ultimately forged the strength and resilience that carried me to where I am today. I learned that true validation doesn't come from external approval, but from within. It comes from trusting your instincts, nurturing your passions, and refusing to let anyone dim your light. And sometimes, the most unexpected moments, like a sister's wedding, can become the perfect stage for your quiet revolution to finally take center stage. So, if you're out there, fighting twice as hard, building your dreams against a tide of doubt, know this: your efforts are not in vain. Keep going. Keep believing. Your moment of vindication will come, and when it does, it will be all the more satisfying because you earned every single bit of it. What's your story of proving the doubters wrong? Share it in the comments below and let's inspire each other. This story resonated with you. Please like and share it. You never know who might need to hear that they are not alone in their struggle.